was 2013, 14. I taught all 7th grade and then in a 6th grade, and then next year 8th grade and 6th grade, and then last year 8th grade and 7th grade. And so now this year I get to teach 8th grade and 7th grade again. So Mary Lou teaches 3 APs, 7th grade math, which combines 7th grade TEKS and 8th grade TEKS. So, again, like we said yesterday, the process skills in math and science at those grade levels mesh pretty well. So we have no issue really with the process skills. If you look at what Mary Lou teaches at the beginning of the year, we've been able to tie that to levels of organization in plants and animals. So we teach that later in the year, which works well. Word problems, rational numbers, operations. I tied it with situations of work and no work, because that's really where I strongly see the math in 7th grade. That's week 5 and 6, so that's fine. One variable equations and inequalities, again, situations of work and no work. That works, actually lines up pretty well. Modeling and solving equations and inequalities, again, work and no work. Here's one area that doesn't line up, is slope, y, intercept, and rate. The way that we're tying it to work is the relationship between, because we use situations of work with inclined planes, so changing the angle of the ramp changes the amount of force and therefore work needed to move the object. But I feel like since this work thing ties well in other areas, maybe when Mary Lou teaches it, she could refer back to some of these ideas.
And the thing I wanted to note about, it is an 8th grade concept, as you guys can see, for math. So we were making a comment that even if you just teach 7th grade and you don't teach 8th grade, what you can do is say, okay guys, remember what you guys learned in 7th grade science about work or no work, and then you could also tie it back to that 8th grade math concept if you guys are teaching 8th grade math for that.
Here are some areas where we've tied more process skills back to what was taught in the 7th grade and 8th grade TEKS for math. And then simple and compound events and simple events in its complement. I'm trying to remember how to read.
Simple and compound events were probability. Thank you.
Which ties with Punnett squares, but I'm trying to think of why I said, oh, maybe dichotomous keys would work there too.
Because it's,
What was the dichotomous key?
maybe because if something happens, because isn't that with compound events? Like something depends on what happened before the
Okay.
steps.
And that's
Uh-huh.
It's been a while since we
Right.
talked about this.
Okay, and then
I think right here.
data representation, again, appears as a process skill, can be connected to a process skill in science. Pythagorean theorem is an 8th grade TEK. Again, we could go back to that when we're talking about right triangles with situations of work and no work and inclined planes. And then dilations and transformations, using a microscope could be tied with these concepts. And then we talked yesterday, Tim and I talked yesterday about transformations, and I know toward the end of 7th grade we start talking about traits and variations in traits in organisms, but transformations, graphing that kind of data, I think traits in future generations or or changes in populations of organisms based on their, abiotic and biotic components in environments. When you graph populations and then maybe compare it to some kind of measurement of an abiotic component. I'm thinking about that Project Wild deer activity, that graphing that data over time makes a pretty nice graph where this is illustrated.
So question, is the purple where there's a problem, or that's where you're linking?
Where there's we're still linking it, seeing connections there, but there's a problem because this stuff is not taught. It's taught in math later than it is in science. It's taught after we address it.
But,
What
for
science are
example,
those?
The science, we actually didn't add the environment stuff, organisms in the environment except for cells.
So I would say especially if it's just grade 7, all the yellow ones, or all the purple ones that you guys did see, those were mostly the 8th grade, so it shouldn't really have an issue for those of you guys that are just teaching 7th grade math. We were just noticing that, oh, this is like the reverse, especially because I do pre-AP, so I teach those 8th grade concepts. So for me, if I did want to kind of go back to, or if they wanted to see it in 7th grade, for my kids that are 7th graders, they'll probably see the science first before they see the math concept that might relate to it.
So is the purple going to be a problem for math because science is going to be using it?
I would say the purple
Or is it
is,
going to be the purple is identifying a problem in science because they're using it before math skill is learned?
I'm saying it's not gonna be an issue because it's 8th grade math concepts. But it'll be, you can just, for math, you can just tie it back. If you're teaching 8th grade math, you could tie it back to the 7th grade science concepts that they know, just to kind of help remind them or give them something that they know, a known concept that they can use just to kind of tie in that math concept for them. in
What
8th
about
grade.
science
So I guess you're saying a place where you can integrate the science?
Yes.
in math?
So
Yes.
it's like the reverse, because how we're mostly kind of viewing, oh, they need to see the math skill first, then the science skill. It's when the purple will kind of be the flip of that. Since most of it's the 8th grade concept, they can say, oh, think back to your 7th grade science class, and this is where you saw it. You can kind of connect it to the 8th grade math
But
concept.
is that a problem for 7th grade science is my question?
No.
I don't think it is.
well, when we talk about microscopes, using microscopes, we never use the word, well, let me rephrase that. I do not use the word dilation or transformation, because I'm simply using the microscope to view something in the teeny tiny.
Right,
I don't use those words,
right.
so I can't see that being a problem.
How do you explain the different ocular magnifications?
It's just a way of looking at it, making it closer, like just like when they zoom in on their phone and they take their pretty little fingers and separate it and it brings it in, it makes it bigger, magnifies it.
Right, but with
And that's-
a either binocular scope or a microscope, the
But I don't-
oculars are very specific about the magnification.
The magnification, but I don't use it as a dilation.
No,
I
I
just
got
simply
that,
say it's
but
magnifying.
but you do have them, you say it's a 20x shorthand, if you would, ocular. And you're using it with a 10x ocular, so they
Of course
give
I
you
do.
200x
Of course I do.
magnification.
Okay, Tim, do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know whether or not the translations, dilations are supposed to be on a coordinate grid?
They are.
That's what I thought. So maybe the microscopes doesn't, unless you had a transparent grid under that,
Which we don't.
well, you could cut one out.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's the only way I think it would tie, because the transformations are supposed to be tied kind of algebraically to what you would do to rotate it 30 degrees or whatever, on a coordinate grid.
On the 40 grade.
Yeah,
So is this for 7th grade or 8th grade?
8th grade.
It says seventh grade at this.
Comparing, they compared 7th grade to 8th grade, because that's what they do.
Oh, eighth grade.
Exhibit 18.
But it's not.
Also, because seventh grade doesn't do translations, transformations. They do that violation for connecting with their skills, but.
And then my other question is about work. Do you actually calculate work? And you
just had a
realize
conversation with
about
Dr.
that,
West
that's not
about
what the
that.
team says?
We just had a
Well,
conversation about
you
that.
don't have to, I mean, you could just use your spring scale, you know, to measure the amount of force that's needed, this is, you know, this is greater or lesser, or you actually can calculate work. I don't think the
But the-
TEKS, what do the TEKS say?
Contrast situations where work is done with different amounts of force to situations where no work is done, such as moving a box with a ramp and without a ramp or standing still. So simply when work is being done. Nothing about calculating, and at STAR questions, it's which would be
Identifying
easy.
situations of work, well, they're
They'll give you
really
a picture or something.
identifying a situation, is work occurring, is it not, that's it.
That is it, because that's what I did when I looked at the TEKS. I looked at the 8th grade STAR, how is that being tested? And it's literally, it gives you a picture of, you know, a person lifting weights or pushing a box up a truck into a truck, which would be easier with the ramp or without the ramp, which would be less, or which one would be more work or something like that.
Right, but that, yeah.
Okay,
All right.
that it? Thank you. Does anyone else have their alignment ready? That'd be a no?
Ours is different, it's the same as package, except for all the stuff
This is what Okay, so.
Oh, no, that was mine. No, that's my second.
All right, so for those of you who are finished with your horizontal alignment and you presented it, you are ready to begin your lesson preparation? Yes? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I have your STAR score. I'm gonna give you a hard copy, please. And in interest of the students of Dr. West, you have to sit here and take this off of a hard copy and put it into, data. We're giving you this to help you, and we're also doing what we're gonna ask you to do to help them. So we want you, first of all, how many of you are on Eduphoria, have Eduphoria for your STAR scores? Okay, so Eduphoria, our Eduphoria remote card allows us to see our STAR scores. We can see our STAR scores on Eduphoria. So I'm gonna distribute this first, and
So we have Eduphoria, but we don't have the ability to see our STAR scores.
you do not have the ability to see your
I
STAR
just
scores.
checked earlier.
And you are gonna need your principal's help, or someone in your district who does have the ability to look at your STAR scores.
Our principal got ours last year.
You have not received, you haven't received your STAR score.
So what do you want?
I received something in
My scores are. Yeah, that's the top. They have one.
Okay, really quickly, I have to say this, and you need to hear me say this, and I'm gonna say this a couple of times. You get a stipend for your summer work. You will not receive that stipend until Rowan gets a copy of your paper. A paper, she has to see it, and she will then check you off to say you have turned in your STAR unit.
If you are STAR tested.
That's the other thing that I was about to say.
Assignment.
How, no, because Rowan even wants this
With your
with
name.
your name on it,
Saying
saying
you don't
non-applicable. I do not test math, I do not test science in my grade level. Until she gets a paper that says your name, non-applicable, did not test these subjects. Whatever you want to put on there, she will not check you off, and you will not get your summer stipend.
I think we buy
You heard me
special
say
hat
that.
Rowan. We either need, I'm debating between a queen's crown and a black pointy hat.
Me or
Or
Rowan?
Rowan.
A black
I
one
think
hat
she needs a
crown.
queen.
Yes, maybe,
That's your answer.
This is not appropriate conversation.
honestly.
Sorry, not appropriate. We have requirements to report, okay? So the idea is that we're trying to standardize it. We've been through this multiple times. Jen's worked with us multiple times on trying to come up with a format. So right now, this appears to be the best way that we can do this.
So our idea was that you write down your data, because I think I think, maybe you disagree, if this is not helpful for you, then please do it the way you feel like you can. But I think it's hard, especially when I look at my Eduphoria data, to go here and then go to this screen and put it in. But if you are that kind of person who can split screen your computer and look at data here and input it over here and get it right, you do what you feel like you need to do. But I do want to look at this. I want to go over this really quickly. Notice that we're asking for 2015.
Wait, hold on, not all of us have the paper sheet. I'm sorry.
Is it supposed to be under the Elmo or?
I can put it under the Elmo as soon as I. Actually, I say I can put it under the Elmo, but I'm not sure how to operate
I
this.
think you have to unhook the HDMI from my.
Well, I mean, if we have paper copies, I don't, you know.
Head out the rest of it.